morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. My name is Callie, and this is another weekend of Clarinets, Cats, and Coffee Repertoire Edition. This week, we will be featuring the third movement of Poulenc's Sonata for clarinet and piano. Now, if you've been following along the past few weeks, you've probably noticed that 2 weeks ago, I featured the first movement, and if you haven't seen it, be sure to go check it out. I've shared a bunch of fun facts about the history of the piece. Last week, I featured the second movement, the romanza, and I shared a few ideas that I have about interpreting music that is written for clarinet and piano. So here we are in the third movement, and I'm going to share just a couple of fun facts with you and then let you go and practice and have a good time on your own. Before I jump into that, I want to thank my patrons and channel members for going the extra mile to support me and my channel. Thank you all so much for jumping on board. I hope to see more of you there, and once again, thank you all so much. All right, so this third movement, it wasn't so popular with the critics, okay? First movement started very strong, great musical ideas, really good conversation, clarinet, piano. Same for the second movement, just very vocal, lyrical, and beautiful. By the time we get to the third movement, it can kind of seem like Poulenc maybe ran out of musical ideas to toy around with, right? So there's a bit more repetition in here than in previous movements, but to me, that actually makes this more accessible. So I find this movement to be really fun, and this is the movement that hooked me on this piece of music, right? This is the one that kind of was the earworm that kind of got stuck in my head. So maybe this would have been a better first movement, but either way, I think it's accessible for a couple of reasons. One, it starts off strong with a very peppy, perky sort of melody. And to me, it kind of, when it jumps up and down, and especially it goes into the staccato high register stuff, to me, it kind of sounds like a mischievous cat goofing around and getting into trouble, right? And it's broken up by these really long lyrical phrases that will come through the piano part and the clarinet part as well. So it gives the listener a little bit of a break from this high intensity that's happening. And then we're right back into the main musical idea, which of course is very familiar because we just heard this at the beginning, and the whole piece ends with a bang, and it's a lot of fun. So when you are interpreting this, it is important to keep the repetitiveness of this in mind, and so it can get kind of dull and a little boring if everything is played in the same kind of way. So if we take a look at the score, at the very beginning, we're at fortissimo, which is a great way to start the third movement of a energetic, fun piece of music such as this, right? And it goes down to forte. Any opportunity you have to play mezzo, forte, or piano, you should just really go for it, because most of this movement is quite loud and quite high, right? So don't go nuts with all these squeaky, high staccato eighth notes. They're gonna sound loud because they're high, okay? So they don't have to be too pointy or fortissimo or jabby. When we have this long lyrical melody at 6, it's going to sound full and luscious because it's legato. So we want to make sure that we're really blowing through the phrase and playing with big musical gestures to really phrase through it. Again, so it gives us some contrast from what we were just playing before and what we'll be playing at the end with all of these very vertical. This is very horizontal and very lyrical, so you want to bring that out as much as possible. Okay, so if we really commit to the differences between this very sort of vertical and this horizontal contrast, and then bringing out any of the mezzo to piano dynamics that we have. And before we wrap everything up, I'm going to share just a few fingerings that will come in handy as you're working on this piece. So we've got this Altissimo G. One of my favorite fingerings for that note is just this. So you're playing like an overblown high B and then adding the banana key down here and your pinky right here. High F sharp isn't too dissimilar from the high G. You just swap these fingers, and these two notes, these fingerings here, sound actually pretty similar. So I like to use those in measure 39. I like to use that fingering combination for F sharp to G. So be sure to try that out. You may also appreciate the long fingering for high F sharp, like this, or overblowing a high B flat like this. So try those different fingerings for the F sharp out and see what works well for you. When you get to measure 40, try using an overblown throat tone F sharp for the high C sharp. Now it is a little bit low, so you gotta make sure that you're voicing high enough so that it doesn't sound too flat. I prefer that fingering than the normal high C sharp because I kind of get a little squeaky when I'm trying to line this up. And I also like to keep the C sharp in the same color range as that A sharp. And so this works really well, and I can voice them all similarly, and they end up coming out in a way that, to me, sounds very clean and matches. But there are lots of players who do the normal fingering for the high C sharp as well, so you should definitely try out both and see what works the best for you. And lastly, when we get to the very last measure, that is often kind of the hardest measure in the whole piece. We get to it and we end up just kind of squeaking our way through it, okay? So the first problem there is actually a problem in this whole piece, and that is we want to rush the 16th notes. And it's not even rushing, we want to compress them all to the beginning part of the beat and go through it really fast. And so I'd like to discourage you from doing that anytime you have 16th notes in this piece. Imagine playing all of the 16th notes in their precise allotted amount of time, but giving energy to the line by crescendoing through it. So that way you have full control over your fingers and you have that added boost of musicality, expression, etc. with that, okay? So once you get your fingers under control, you're not rushing on that, try this fingering for the high G sharp. Now this may not work on every clarinet. It works for me on this Yamaha. So F sharp like this, high G sharp, you just put your first finger down. Now if you're crescendoing through it, that should come out really nice. This does need a lot of air, this particular fingering, but it works out pretty well for me, which is why I do it. So take your time, don't let yourself rush through it, and use a lot of air, and it will give you the energy that you're looking for in that last measure. All right, guys, I hope you have fun working on this. This is just skimming the surface of all of the depth that this whole piece of music has. So if you guys have tips of your own, whether it's for this movement or any of the others, please share them in the comments below so we can all learn from each other. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, a good week next week, and as always, happy practicing.